Most of us have entered information to a web-based form, whether you've used SurveyMonkey or Google Forms. Most of us at least have been on the entering end, and some of us have probably even been on the creating end. Forms come in handy when you want to survey other people about information, take votes, deliver quizzes. They can also be really good for a lot of repetitive data entry and giving yourself basically a data validation with a simple entry to do. Or if you have an employee that you want to enter data in a particular way and you don't want to trust them to navigate a spreadsheet correctly because they may not be attuned to spreadsheets, forms are a great way to do so. Forms really are a database tool, but Google has integrated them with spreadsheets, and if we go to our Google Drives and we select New, you will find Forms under More. I want to point out how Google Forms use a green icon, just like the green icon of the Google Sheets. The icon looks just a little bit different. We'll go ahead and click on that and create a new Google form. So the first thing you're going to want to do is title your form. We're going to make a generic survey of our class. You are welcome to be as humorous as you want to be in these questions. You do not have to make the exact questions that I make because that would probably kind of be boring. Alright, so I have named my class, and Google Forms repeats my file name here as the name of my survey. I can also give a little bit of a description to this. So I've created a little description of what the form is. Our menu is really short, and notice that we do not have the share button but a send form button, which has very similar features to it as sharing, but it gives you different ways to deliver this form to people. Our file menu is very similar as other file menus in other Google Drive products. Edit really only has undo and redo. We can view the live form that we're working on, so we can toggle and look at what our form looks like to other people. We can edit questions, we can change the theme, we can go to compact controls and full screen. We can insert various kinds of questions, advanced kinds of questions, or layout tools like a section header, a page break, a picture, or a video. This is where we can turn off whether we're accepting responses or not. All forms initially come with accepting responses. Once we have some responses from the class, it'll be easier to use these and make sense of the summary of responses versus view responses. You can change your response destination. Let's go and click that. You may not have that. You might have save response destination. Because I have made forms before, on my Google Drive is set up to always create a new spreadsheet with forms. I'm just going to leave it as Amy's Class Survey, which is the same title as the form, but with responses next to it in parentheses, so I'll hit create with that. I can also delete all the responses and start over. The rest of the tools, add-ons, and help are kind of normal for what we have seen in other Google Drive products. I mostly use a lot of stuff in this menu bar. There's my undo and redo. I'm in my edit questions. I usually do like to pick a theme. Now, if you would like to build your own theme, I have, for example, when I have done team voting, I have made a theme that includes logos and graphics specific to my organization. You can do that too by customizing the basic theme. And there are all sorts of things such as choosing an image. You can choose an existing image that they have provided, clip art, and so on and so forth. Or you can upload one of your own. And then you select. You can edit the title, the description. You can give them different kinds of fonts. You can change the font size and text and color. You can edit how a question will look. You can change how help text will look. You can set what options might look like, and you can even change the form background. or the page background. So once you're done messing around with the changing the theme, you can just go back to editing your questions. So we're going to do a number of questions under my direction, but you're welcome to include any additional questions. The first question I would like you to ask all your classmates is what they're... And a question like this actually deserves some help text because you could answer it with a first name or a title and a last name or first and last name. So we might want to prompt people to enter their first and last name. And somebody needs to enter text on our question, so we're going to change the question type to text. We are going to require that, so we'll select the required question box, and we're going to continue to ask questions from here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to ask people for their email address. We don't really need any help text here because we know what an email address is, and it is a text. To make sure people actually enter email addresses, Google Forms has the ability to do some data validation. And we'll select data validation. It is a text kind of data validation because making sure it's a specific kind of text. And we actually have an algorithm that checks for a properly formatted email address. You can give people a custom error text or not. And let's go ahead and make that a required question. Now let's ask people a question where they can choose a single answer from a list. So we're going to ask questions in such a way that they will only be able to pick one thing. And one thing can be selected with both multiple choice and choose from a list. Checkboxes actually allow people to pick more than one item, but it also provides the items from a list. If after you've made your survey you want to change the style of question that it is, and you have the list of things, you can switch between these three items and you won't lose any of the items in your list. You'll just change the format of the question. I'm going to ask people what their favorite holiday is. And I'm going to make sure that I select a multiple choice question. Notice that it says option 1. I'm going to start listing options for them to choose from. And under multiple choice, one of our choices is to add an other response, which allows people to pick the other radio button and type in an answer. This option is only available in the multiple choice list type of items. It is not available in the choose from a list. So I'm going to go ahead and put some holidays in here, and then we'll pick back up after I have entered some text. Alright, so I have a list of holidays, and if I want to get rid of any of my choices, I can just select the X next to that box, and it would go away. You want to make sure that you don't have any boxes that say option with a number after them, because that'll actually show up. If you would like to rearrange your items after you have selected them, you can do that. You can also tell Google to go ahead and present them randomly. Now, I might like to put things in chronological order, and this is going to be kind of a guess here. Okay, so I have my multiple choices arranged in the order that I want them, and I can go ahead and make that be a required question. At any given time, you can always look at what your survey looks like by clicking on the View Live Form, and it's going to open a new tab up here, and you can see what your questions look like on the sheet. Now, one of the things about radio buttons is it makes for a really long question, and it takes up a lot of real estate. Next, we're going to do a menu button, and that's going to kind of collapse, so when we're not answering that question, it doesn't continue to take up all that real estate like the radio buttons do. So I will add item, choose. Again, let's make a survey that asks people questions to answer from a list. I'm going to ask people what county they live in. It's important when making a list using the choose from a list option that people aren't going to require an other choice. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to ask people a question in which the answer is a number. And we'll use a text field for this because it's an open question where they can write anything they want in there. And we're going to use our advanced data validation settings to make sure that the number that they enter meets the criteria that we're looking for. If I want to make sure that something is a number, I can select is a number. If I'm looking to get only whole numbers, I could even choose whole numbers. I might actually just choose is a number, or I think I might select greater than or equal to 0. It's also important when you ask your question that you also put the metric in for the number. For example, I was going to ask, how long have you lived in your current house? Well, am I looking for months or years or days? So let's make sure that we phrase our question so that it actually reads properly for the number to be an appropriate answer. Okay. Now let's ask a yes or no question. Now to do yes or no, probably your best bet is to choose a multiple choice question. And make one of your options be yes and the other option be no. Notice here under multiple choice, as well as in our list question, that we can send people to a specific page based on an answer. You could really tree out these surveys. For example, if I were to do a survey at the school, I might ask people if they were a student, faculty, or staff after going through questions that would apply to all three. But once I've asked the generic questions for all three groups, I then want to ask more specific questions based on someone's role. I could then split this survey so that we'd have different pages for the three different groups. But we're not going to do that on this particular quiz. We're going to keep it, or this particular form, we're going to keep it fairly simple. All right, and the final kind of question I want you to use is a paragraph text. So I want you to ask an open-ended question that would inspire people to want to write a couple sentences about what's going on. We can see how a paragraph text question differs from a text question in that we have a slightly larger area to write in. So when I'm done creating questions, I can hit done. I still always have the option to add another item. I can add another question item. I can add advanced question things such as scales, grids, dates, or time. Or I could put in a new section header to organize my survey, a page break to send people to a new page, images to either illustrate my form or have people answer questions about a picture or a video. Here at the bottom is information about how we want our confirmation page to look. The default greeting for someone after they hit the submit button for their survey is your response has been recorded. It's kind of generic. Feel free to update that to something that's a little more friendly. You can give people the option to take the survey again. In this particular case, we really don't want people to do that, but if you had created a form for data entry, it might be nice to give people a link back and re-enter the next thing that they're going to enter and so on. You could allow people to look at the results so far, and you can also allow people to edit their responses after they've submitted it. at the beginning, we also have other settings about the form in general, such as showing a progress bar at the bottom of pages. This is pretty important if you're going to have a multiple page survey. If you only have two, when you're on the first page, it'll say 50%, and when you're on the second page, it'll say 100. But if you're going to have a lot of pages, a progress bar is really helpful because a lot of people will abandon forms if they are not aware that they're going to be ending soon. You can require people to log in to enter information in a form. This is a good way to do some checks and balances, especially on voting or quizzes. And you can also shuffle the question order. We don't want to do any of these things on our form, but they are available for us. So you can go ahead and look at the live form here. And I'd like you to go ahead and take your survey and make sure that you're happy with how your survey reads and answers and that it makes sense as you're answering the questions. If you aren't happy with any of your questions, you can come back to your form, and on any of the given questions you will find that there is an edit button which brings you back into the editing tools for a question. You can duplicate a question, which is nice if you are having similar answers for a slightly different question. Say you have a agree, slightly disagree, no opinion, strongly, or disagree, strongly disagree. You could use this duplicate to constantly repeat the answers and just change the question. Or you can throw questions out completely using the delete button. So once you're happy with that, do go ahead and take your survey, and then we'll come back to looking at our survey results after people have entered their surveys in the Take My Survey discussion forum, and we have a chance to look at our results. We'll do that next week.